Hello and thank you for joining us today at the Bramble Patch. My name is Wendy and on Technicals today we have Alicia. Today we're going to be looking at another technique that you can use all your scraps and bits and bobs up with. Previously we've done tutorials on using a scrap crazy ruler. We've also done crazy patchwork. Now crazy patchwork, if you remember, you start off with a central shape, usually with an uneven edges, so 3, 5, 7, so just an odd number of edges, and you go around it whichever way. Today we're going to be doing crumb quilting. Now crumb quilting, you really can use very, very tiny pieces of fabric. They really are your total scraps. And let's face it, we've all got lots of those. Whilst we've been in lockdown in the past year, it's been really good to actually delve in and use some of our bits and bobs. So I think we've come to the really small parts now, and I've still got plenty. And even if I've made a quilt, I still seem as though I've not hardly touched what I've actually got in my boxes. So crumb quilting, I'm just going to give you a few ideas of what you can do with it once you've made the fabric. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to put scraps of fabric together to make pieces of fabric that we can use for something. So I've made a few bits and bobs up just to give you an idea. So to start off with, I have made this cushion. Now if I'll bring it close to this camera to start with, and you can see this one has got some very obscure shapes in it. Okay, it doesn't have to have, they don't have to be rectangles or anything. If I place it here, you might be able to see it a little bit better if it's not too close. There we go. So as you can see, this has got some really irregular shapes. What I've done, I decided when I was going to do this tutorial to just break the fabrics up a little bit. You can put any fabrics, any colour, literally anything goes, as long as you've got one straight edge to the piece of fabric. So this one, I decided just to put all the odd shapes in. So they are literally slithers. Some pieces are extremely tiny. So I made that into like a little cottagey type cushion. My daughter's got a wicker rocking chair, and she saw this and rather liked the idea that it could go in her house rather than my house. So that's something you can do. You can actually make a cushion. And usually you've got bits and bobs left over anyway. So this is also some fabric. So what I did, I sorted out the lighter fabrics from my bit box, and I put them together. Now on this one, you can see there's lots of, they are more regimental shapes. They're squares, rectangles, anything. So that's that one. Just move these down as I go. Now this one, the reverse side of this you will see in the next tutorial, but as I've got lots and lots of pieces left over, I actually made the cushion backing using the technique of that we're going to do today. So all the little tiny pieces, and you can probably see, if you can see here, they really are tiny, tiny pieces, some of them. So that's the reverse, that's the back of a cushion. When you make pieces, what I did, I selected a few out of my lighter stash, Christmassy pieces that I found in there that have been in there goodness knows how many years. And I won't apologise, because a lot of the fabrics you may be able to see in some things I'm working with are not current. Some of them might be 15 years old, but that's what this is all about. So the crumb quilting, you know, it can go on forever. So this is what I made out of selecting some of the lighter fabrics. And what I've done, the actual snowman himself, so his body here and his face, that is all crumb quilting, just out of lighter pieces that I selected. If I can hold it here, you may be able to see that. And also, if you just take a look at that, the background you can see, I used the technique that I demonstrated a few weeks ago with the wavy lines, and just did a little bit of background scene, just using up pieces of fabric once again. So literally it was made out of nothing, all just bits and bobs. Here is another, these are fabrics again that you may have recognised that I've used recently. Again, lots and lots of tiny pieces in here, but they all go in and they all work. So moving on to something totally scrappy, and these are, you will probably notice there's not the lighter shades in, because I've actually filtered them out and put them into some of the other ones. So as you can see, we've got total scraps here, and I'll show you how I'm going to cut those up at the end of the tutorial. So let's take a look and see how we start off to use to make a crumb block or crumb fabric, whatever you want to call it. So I've been in the box at work, and obviously we have lots and lots of bits left over from quilts or anything that we've made for the shop as our shop samples, and we do tend to keep them, and some of us, the members of staff, will go in and make what we can out of them. So I've got a vast selection here of bits and bobs. Oh, there's a few more bits there, I didn't know I got those. But also I happened to go into our box and somebody had made a binding, and then when we went to use it, decided that we didn't want the colour. So that went into the box as well. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut a little piece of that off. And this is very pretty fabric actually, and it just shows you it's worth keeping it. So I'm just going to press that open, because that was obviously cut at 2.5 inches, ready to do a binding, but decided not to use it. So, you know, we just don't throw it away. So first of all, I'm going to start with this strip. Now I know that the edges of this are straight anyway, because they've been cut for the binding. So I'm just going to take a piece of that, and I'm randomly going to take some bits from here. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to lay a piece of fabric right side down on the edge, and I'll sew, and I'll just keep sewing along. Now, I tend not to make them overlap. You can if you want to, it's up to you. So let's take it to the sewing machine and get started. And I'm not being fussy when I pick the colours up. Literally, I just pick pieces of fabric up and just go. And what we're going to do, we're going to build up some pieces. Now, these can be any size. It really, really doesn't matter. There we go, second one going on there. So these are being sewn right sides together. To form a strip. What else we got here? There we go. Oh, these look interesting. Let's have some of these. See, these are a reasonable size, if you can see them, but I'm still going to use them, and then I can just cut them down as I want to. Let's pop that one in there. I'm just going to sew onto my little piece of fabric. Okay. Right, so I'll just move these to one side. I'm hoping this table doesn't look too messy for you. So this is what you can see now. So the fabrics are right side together, and I've just stitched everything along. It doesn't matter what size they are. It really, really doesn't. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and I'm using the very small 4.5 inch square, because this is adequate. Just for me to trim these off. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to separate these up now. And if you don't want to use a ruler, then don't. Okay, so those are all separated up, and I've got another crumb there, so I might keep that and use that later. And when you press these, again, it doesn't matter which way you press them, I generally try and press towards the darker fabric, whatever that might be, because you're not going to match any seams up. So it absolutely does not matter. I do tend to, as you can see, when I'm doing it, I do tend to just run the iron over it just to warm the fabric and just press it back. Okay. So now we have several pieces of scrap, like so. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start and join different bits and bobs together to make squares, blocks, anything, any shape goes, it doesn't matter. And I've already pieced a few bits and bobs together here this morning. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to now keep adding to this. So you see I have a block here, and what I'll do is I'll just sew it on. And I'm not trying to actually join seams up. In fact, I try to avoid that because I just think it looks a lot better. So let me grab a few of these bits and bobs over here, and then we can keep going. I tend to join pieces of fabric together. So I'll join 2 pieces, and then once I've built a lot up, I'll then go back and then join bits to them. So for instance, I've got just a piece here with 2 pieces, but there's this rather long piece of fabric that I've got here. So I'm actually going to join that there, and then I'll show you what I'll do with that in a minute. So like I say, I tend to try not to put the 2 matching fabrics together, but it doesn't matter. Anything goes. It really, really does. And size-wise, once again, because you can cut it and trim it, and whatever you trim off, you save. You literally don't throw anything away. You use the little tiny crumbs. If I've got any the little triangles that you cut off if you're doing snowballing corners, they look brilliant in anything like this. They really, really do. So another piece here. Let's have a go and put this one on here. And all I'm going to do now, once I'll just do this one, and then we'll move on again. And I haven't got my thing, so I'm just going to run that in there so that I don't get anything funny going on. There we go. So as you can probably see, I've got virtually like a string here, and I'll just knit those in between to separate those up. And once again now I'm going to press those open. So I'm just warming that fabric and pushing it away. When you tend to do this, so this one for instance, so I've got 2 pieces of fabric here, but only 1 solid piece here. So if I have that, then I do try and press it towards the piece of fabric that doesn't have a seam in. Just helps eliminate a little bit of bulk there. So I'm just pressed that to the fabric that has no seam in it at all. Likewise, this is another little one like that. But it really doesn't matter. Okay, like so. So we've just done all those now. And what I've done, I've actually got some bigger pieces here that you can see. So what we can do now, we can start to join pieces together to actually build a bigger block. And like I say, at the end of this tutorial, I'm going to show you what you can do with these blocks. So let's join a few of these together and see what we come up with. So it's up to you, it's at your personal preference, whether you want to tidy the edges up or have the inside scrappy as well. I do generally tidy them up, if I'm honest, because I just think, particularly if you ever want to free machine it, it just takes out those extra threads off to help your machine go through a lot smoother. So you've got no catching or anything like that going on. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually sew these 2 together to actually make a bigger block, and you just tag them on. They don't have to be the same size. You can trim them down as you go, so it really, really doesn't matter. So let's just pop that in here. And I'm going to find something else to do as well. Well, what else have we got here? Here we go, that one. And oh, that one looks quite interesting. Now I'll cheer that up a bit. And I want to do them just so that you can see how you can cut them back. Because, like I say, it really doesn't matter how they go together. And they actually do become quite effective. When you're doing them just as joining two strips together, you think, oh, this is not actually going to grow very quickly. But all of a sudden, it just all comes together. And within no time at all, you know, you've got a 12-inch piece or something. What it is, it's a good idea with something like this, particularly if you want to do something like a quilt as you go. So if you want to do a quilt as you go, what you could do, instead of using a pre-cut, as in a charm pack, you could make your own charm pack out of your crumbs. Then you could sash it together with maybe a plainer fabric, whether it be a light or a black, with using the quilt as you go method. And in no time at all, and I see some absolutely stunning ones. We've had people, customers that have actually used the technique of using crumb quilts and just made a quilt top and then brought them in, and we've quilted them on the long arm quilting machine for them. And they are so interesting because those quilts tell a story. They tell a story of your quilting life. Or maybe you've used scraps of fabric that have been used just for one person in particular. And every time you pick a piece of fabric up, you think, oh, I made such and such out of that. And it's a bit of a trip down memory lane. Okay, so we now have this block, okay? Now, as you can see here, the ends are completely uneven. So all I'm going to do is just nip that off, like so. Now that square is a perfect size to use again, so I wouldn't throw that away. I probably wouldn't include that bit on it. I just whip that piece off, okay? So already you can see it growing. So what we can do now, I'll do the same with this piece. I'll just tidy that edge up there. And maybe we could, let's put another strip down there, I think. What should we put down there? I must have something. Oh, look, that looks all right. Let's join these two together. Like I say, this really, really does grow. And I mean, if you ever want to do something like this out of your scraps, if you was to use a fleece backing, make a lovely picnic blanket, really ideal. Or just a blanket that you can keep in the car. If it's got the fleece in, it's nice and snuggly. Okay. Okay. Right. So let's give that a little press. And there we go. And I've still got my little thread saver attached there, so I'll take that off. And you can see already how this is building up. So I'm just going to take this little piece off here. Now this is perfect because it's already got two pieces of fabric joined together. So that is a perfect piece of fabric now to add on to another block that I've already got on the go. So that would easily go on any of these. So I'll just give that a little press. So there we go. So there's that block, and we can just keep adding. So if I add these two together, for instance, because a lot of these pieces that I was using when I was putting this together, were pieces that had been cut off of things. So they still actually had threads attached to them. And I think I was wearing as much thread as I'd actually used to construct it by the end of it. And I had to de-thread myself, which is nothing unusual for me. Very good. So just give that a little press and press that one open. And what we'll do is let's have a look. Should we put that on there? Yeah, let's put that on there. So, it's just going through there. Okay. Right. And in no time at all, you've actually got a block. Like so. Now, what can you do with these blocks when they're made? So as you can see, they just go together really, really quickly. So I'm just going to move these out of the way because I've got a lot of mess here. I'm just going to move those off like so. So, for instance, now what could we do with this block? So first of all, we can make this block any size we want to. I just brought my 6.5 inch ruler in with me. And what I could do is I could decide that I'm going to do a whole batch of 6.5 inch blocks. So I've put this on, just square on, just pretty straight. Doesn't make any difference. And I'm just going to trim that. These will go back in there and I'll use them again. Turn it around. And square it up. So we now have a piece of fabric that can actually be used, and that would look nice probably with a nice sashing in between. So that's how you can cut it just as on the straight. I have a piece here I made up, and you can see all the edges are totally uneven. So if I put this square onto me, if I want the angles of the lines to look slightly different, on the first one, they're going more or less horizontal or vertical. With this one, what I could do is I could actually do it more on point so that I'm cutting against itself. Now those are brilliant pieces to put back in. And this is how you start to get the interesting pieces with the little triangles in. Like I say, I haven't put the triangles in because I've used them all up in something else because I wanted something that looked quite spiky. So if I now that one looks as though it's cut on point. Again, that would look good. Or we could just do something completely random. And we've got a block. Again, this does look vertical or horizontal. So instead of doing it straight or on point, why don't we do it offset, like so? Now, all these pieces that I'm cutting off of these three, literally, I could just join all back together and I've got enough for another block. So I'm actually cutting this one so it's just at an angle. It's not on point, it's not squared off, it's just a square shape, but quite irregular. So those are the three ones that I've done with those. The other thing I could do, so, and I can still do that with these if I want to, if I was to choose a shape, so say for instance a heart shape, because it's a very simple one to do, I could draw that out onto my Bondo web, cut around the shape that I'd cut, you know, giving myself a good 1/4 inch, press that onto the wrong side of my fabric and cut that out, and I've got what would look a very designer applique shape, and they look really, really good. And that is how I did my little snowman. All I did was cut his body out and his head out. And you can do it on any shape you wanted to. You could do flowers, anything goes basically. So don't be afraid to trial this. It is fun. It literally doesn't cost you anything at all. As you can see, I have tailored some of the colorways because I've done the paler ones in the first ones you saw on the cushion that I made. And I put lots and lots of different shapes, and they really were obscure shapes. There were all sorts of different angled triangles and everything, total scraps. And I just used the lighter shades. Whereas here, I've just helped myself to the bits and bobs bag that we've got here at the Bramble Patch. And you can see, hopefully, the different effects you can get. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.